Right on cue. Great. Anyways, here is, before I told you, we're not going to do, whatever you learned in the last couple of, or 2 weeks or so, is going to be put on the back burner until we come to summarize it in about Ted Zayin and Bays. But we're going to get into side issues. Just that you have the summary of what the Yud Ches Davar are. In the middle of the page, it's footnote 21. It's about a dozen lines on the top. You see this? Okay, so once again, he just summarizes what exactly are the actual 18 things that they came up to the Aliyah of Hananiah ben Garon, ben Chizkiah, and they voted, Beis Shammai voted out over Beis Hillel. And they made 18 takanos they had machlokesim on, and 18 takanos they were masakin that day, and that's the lesson of the Mishnah. Yud Ches Dvarim Gazru Bo Bayom. Okay, good. There we go. So just quick summary, so we just keep them what they are. They're all true in Tahara. This is about things that can become a sheni. It's Yud, Daled, and Beis. We haven't started yet. I just wanted to do a summary, a listing of what the 18 items were, the Yud Ches Davar that they were Gazru in the Mishnah, which we're going to put on the back burner until we come back to Yud, this on Ted Zayin and Beis. Okay. So, the Gemara just gives you this list here. If you all 9 enactments were related, the result of 9 is becoming a sheni l'tumah is listed in Mishnah Zavim. The first 3 are about drinking or eating tamei food or drink. Someone who eats food that's a rishon. Someone who eats food that's a sheni. They become a sheni. Someone who drinks tamei liquids, which really would not make them a sheni. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is about washing in drawn water. Someone who bathes in shuvim after his tefillah on the same day. Anyone who showers in shuvim. Shuvim means water that has been drawn. That's 4 and 5. And we talked about the reason for the takana was that we're concerned that people would be giving up going to the mikveh. So that's 4 and 5. Number 6. 6 and 7 have to do with Sifrei Kodesh and Truma. So the concern was Truma would become ruined. So therefore they made a takana that Sifrei Kodesh, Sifrei or Sfarim will make the Truma sheni. And hands that are unwashed will make the person a sheni. And then we have the 8 and 9, which are about liquids, are always greater rishon, and therefore cause foods that touch them become a sheni, and liquids can contaminate kalim, which will make them a sheni. So those are 9 of the 18. We don't have the full list. What's going to happen on Ted Zayin and Beis, the Gemara is going to say, what are the others? And then go back to a discussion, add different ones until they get reasonably close to number 18. Just one more paragraph. The 2 other cases of sheni we also mentioned the Gemara, but are not counted in the Shmona Esrei Davar, the 18 enactments. That's full yom, which is a sheni minatorah. So the Gemara removed that. That would have been number 10. The Gemara says Sami Mekan, take it out. And then the Gemara had a different variation about when hands were washed that touched Sfarim. So whether they still made the sefer or made the person the sheni. That was another takana, but that was before the Shmona Esrei Davar. So, at any rate, these are 9 of the 18. 10 with full yom, which was eliminated, brings it down to 9. And just so we have that in front of us, maybe we'll just keep that on the side. The other thing that I want to give to you is something we talked about last week, before we get into our next piece of Gemara. Because we're going to be talking about Yodayim today. And we may as well do this now. This is 2-sided, but I'm only going to do side one with you today. Okay. This is about we talked about touching Sifrei Torah. Okay. Page 1 at the top. Okay. This is from a Daf Yomi thing called Daf Digest. Actually, very good stuff. Page 1. I wrote page 1 on the bottom. Okay. Halacha highlights. Okay. So the Gemara had discussed Af Yodayim Babals Machmas Sefer Poslas Truma Mishum Rabbi Parnoch, that hands that came into contact with a sefer are considered ritually tamei, I'm here. I'm reading on top.
Oh.
Okay? On top.
On top.
It was taught there?
I'm sorry?
No, the Ivrit.
I was reading the Ivrit going to the English.
It says reading is holding a Torah scroll unclothed.
Correct. I didn't read the title.
Yeah, it says reading, it was like the Three Stooges, don't serve the salad undressed.
Well, you'll see. It's getting
Okay,
close to
we'll
it. That's
see.
they had learned this
Talking about-
Gemara, okay? So at any rate, so this is what the Gemara had said, by the way, which was not really included in the Yud Ches Davar, Gemara later said, but there was another type of takana that was mentioned that apparently preceded the Yud Ches Davar as well, that if your hands came into contact with the scroll, the hands are considered impure, and they will the hands now will take that tuma and make the truma become tameh because they're now a sheni. And the reason the Gemara says, and this relates to what Rav Parnach and Rav Yochanan says, "Okay, Sefer Torah Arum." This is the unclothed. If you hold the Sefer Torah unclothed or undressed, so to speak, Nikba Arum, you're buried undressed, unclothed. So the Gemara said, "Arum Salkadaita," really mean unclothed. Alam Rabbi Zera, Arum below mitzvahs. You're buried naked without any mitzvahs. And the Gemara says, "Below mitzvahs Salkadaita," you really mean buried without mitzvahs. Ela Ema Arum below also mitzvah, but you don't have the very mitzvah itself. What you were doing when you were reading the Torah. So the mitzvah of learning the Torah is negated if you touch the Torah with hands that are directly. That's how we understand it. Okay. So there's one little piece of this that we're not knowing, which you see that there was an understanding by a number of Rishonim that even touching the Eitz Chaim with your hands is improper.
At the bottom. Even the bottom.
The wood.
Yeah, but the wood does, you mean the handles?
The handle, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean the middle part, you mean actually the handles. Okay.
Anything, yeah, right, the whole thing. Okay. So Rashi, so if you just read this quickly, Rashi explains that one should not hold the Torah scroll unclothed, but rather you should hold it with an intervening cloth, which is what we do, right? Elsewhere, which is in Megillah, Rashi adds that we're referring to the cloth that is wrapped around the Torah scroll. Okay? So we hold it with a scroll, we wrap the Torah scroll. Evidently, Rashi understood the unclothed one referred to in this passage is the Torah scroll, not the person. So in other words, you shouldn't hold the Torah scroll unclothed. Who should not be unclothed? It means not that your hands are unclothed, but the Torah is unclothed. No one was assuming here, in other words, that you're walking around with gloves. So we understand this. So what do? We hold it with a talus, right? But in other words, if you didn't have a talus, what would be the other thing? When you hold it, when you hold the Sefer Torah, you do psicha, you do otzah, you do achnasa, you dance with Sefer Torah and Simchas Torah. You're not holding it with a talus because we have a cloth around the talus. So it's actually, so once again, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I mean,
is Rashi alluding here to the practice of the Sephardim who have a cloth around the whole of the cloth? You know, it's wrapped inside a.
I mean, the Sephardim has
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a cloth.
inside the.
Right?
Yeah,
Does it
yeah.
cover the whole
I don't
Sefer
know.
Torah?
Yeah, it covers the whole of the cloth.
I don't know.
No, it's just why you're saying the bracha. It's some people.
No,
bring it up.
the whole of the cloth.
I don't know. Really, I don't
The
know.
cloth that we use is for something else. It's because when we say the bracha,
They take the piece of cloth
we
and they
don't
kiss it.
want to, we don't want to open and to wait. So it's not all Sephardim. It's for the Irakim that do that. The Spanish do not.
What do they do?
The Spanish we share the Sefer Torah. It's
Right?
Yeah.
We open.
Yeah.
We say the bracha, we open.
Yeah.
The Irakim no. They put a kind of sudar.
A curtain.
Oh, like a curtain.
Curtain, so that they say the bracha and they just raise it. And they
Oh, I never saw that.
Oh, so it's less time.
Well, it's definitely not a Lanshe Mizrach. That's the first thing, because I've never seen it.
Is it according to the Iraqi? Who does it?
Rocky.
The Bavlim, the Irakim.
Lovely, okay.
That's interesting.
Okay. So that seems to be a separate type of thing. I have seen where there's like a cloth hanging down that they used to kiss the Sefer Torah when they make the bracha, like not a gartel really, but it's like just like a thing that we, as in taking a gartel, right? So at any rate, that's how we understand its meaning. So arum doesn't have to be, and it's a twist because initially we thought it meant the person being completely naked. So the answer is, well, it's not naked, but naked without the mitzvah. So what does naked mean? It means the Torah still is naked, right? If you touch the Torah naked, the Torah is naked However, you put an interposition, a chatzitza, between you and the Torah, that would save the day. Some authorities, and he quotes here from the Marit and the Bach and others, posit that this interdiction, well, fancy word, extends not only to the Torah scroll itself, but even to the Eitz Chaim, the wooden poles which the Torah scroll sewn, may not be touched without an intervening cloth. This appears to be the opinion of Rav Yosef Cairo, and he's quoting here from the Beis Yosef, and who wonders why about the Ashkenazi custom of lifting the Torah without an intervening cloth, which he ultimately explains as possibly relying on the opinion of the Mordechai that one may touch the scroll after one has washed his hands. Okay? But that's probably not what we really think it is.
But the truma is coming from the scroll to you, not the other way.
Correct, but we're not going to touch truma at any rate. Right? Yeah. Let me just do the Ramah, because Ramah is really what really we do. The Ramah retorts that he is from an Ashkenazic ancestry, and he is unfamiliar with such a custom of lifting the Torah scroll without a cloth, since the scroll itself is never touched, only the wooden poles are touched. Some understand Rabbi Yosef Cairo included the poles as well in this interdiction. In the end, the Mishnah Berurah rules that the prohibition does not extend to the Torah scroll's poles. Does anyone see where people do Hagbah? I've seen it sometimes where they do Hagbah and they put the talis around their hands. Yeah.
The handles are the pole that the Torah is on, and the handles
it's
are
two separate
parts,
pieces.
3 parts actually, 2 handles and 1 middle.
Right.
Because otherwise you couldn't get the circles on, or the
Correct.
the discs. Whatever
Right,
they call
correct.
discs. Right. So I'm just saying maybe that maybe if it's different parts, it's different. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know because
I don't know how they would have one part with all together. How would they
you
ever
couldn't. You can't. It's glued together, and sometimes I've seen where the handle comes off. Sometimes they
Correct.
fix it.
I don't know. So I don't know how you would ever touch the roller, except maybe it Parshas Bereishis or Parshas V'Zos Bracha.
Right. So I'm saying that's why we have the meaning to hold.
Actually,
it.
you could
It's not
hold. You
really-
could. You wouldn't do Hagba on it, but you could because sometimes the wood sticks out. What Archie's saying is, even if he felt it applied, it would only apply to the actual stave.
I don't know,
that
but I'm
you-
just saying that.
Maybe. Could be.
Maybe.
Okay. Anyways, what's interesting, I wanted you to see the next piece, the Radvaz, I mentioned the name of the Eshkol. Some commentators have a different interpretation of this passage. Once they're all trying to explain what Ora means. Right? You don't normally say that a Sefer Torah is unclothed, right? This is the undressed, the 3 Stooges, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So they understand the passage to be prohibiting a person who is unclothed from holding a Torah scroll. The Maimon Mordechai writes that this interpretation was rejected, and that's what the Gemara really throws out. And all the poskim ruled like the Shulchan Aruch, the unclothed for references not to the person but to the scroll. Still, Rav Yaakov Chaim Sofer, who is the Kaf HaChaim, Sephardi Posek, writes that this interpretation can be applied to require that anyone who comes into contact with the Torah scroll be dressed in a respectful and appropriate manner. Okay? Don't give a glila to a little kid holding shorts who's going to hold the Sefer Torah. An additional non-halachic interpretation should be noted. The passage refers to the people who view the Torah superficially and deny the Torah is laden with hidden mystical secrets. This is a drash. Thus, those who view the Torah as unclothed, meaning it lacks further depth and profundity, will be buried unclothed, meaning they will be ultimately stray from the path of the truth. Chas v'shalom. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, that's the piece I wanted to see. You see. Okay, let's go to our Gemara now. So the Gemara we're going to go is on, and you keep this. We'll get to the backside of it one day. Okay, so we are in the middle of Yudal Rama Beis, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines from the top, and I'll tell you what the topic is. The topic is about Yodayim, and we just enumerated what 9 of the 18 Gzeros were, and one of them was that about unrinsed hands are going to make the truma, will make you into, and make the truma into a sheni, and this is one of the Gzeros that was made by Talmidei Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Right? When did all these things happen? So this has happened. They came to visit Hananya ben Chizkiah ben Garon, who was trying to touch up Sefer Yecheskel to make sense of it, and he locked himself in the attic with 300 barrels of oil. And they periodically came to visit with him. And one time they all came up there, and they were all there, right? And there was more Beis Shammai than Beis Hillel, and they made 18 Gzeros that day. So who is the author of these Gzeros? Talmidei Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Okay. So the Gemara has the topic of the discussion is really who really made this Gzera, or who made these Gzeros. And it's going to go from one group of Gzeros to another group of Gzeros. So the Gemara says as follows. That's why I said if you didn't really remember what the Yodayim was, it's not as important as because this is more about who really said it. The Yodayim. Everybody see that? It's in the middle of the line, 2 words in the end of a line. The Yodayim, There's no 2 dots. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines on the top. 2 words in the end. V'yodayim talmidei. Yes? Someone say yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Mr. Rechter, yes? We're good? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Okay, V'yodayim. So the Gemara says V'yodayim. Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel gazru. Was this done by Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel? Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel is a school. So these are the students, or the students of the students. Whatever it means, it's the school of Beis Shammai. Is this who did it? Shammai v'Hillel gazru. This was actually done by Hillel and Shammai themselves. Because we followed the Tanya, we have a brisa that enumerates a number of different gezerot, and that's why it's going to get off the topic of these 18 to talk about other gezerot that happened at different times. Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi ben Yoezer, Ishtredav, Yossi ben Yochanan, Ishrushlaim. You will remember these names from first parak of Pirkei Avos. All right, they're one of the earliest groups of the Zugos in that listing of the Masorah. Gazu Tuma al Eretz Amim. They said that living outside of Eretz Yisrael, you are automatically become Tameh. Now, why would you become Tameh? You're going to say because Israel is holy, holy, holy. Well, that may be a mystical reason, but the concern was that there were kvaros that the goyim would bury in, and they were not really. And they were not marked, correct? They were not marked, and even today, they relocate cemeteries sometimes a lot quicker than Jews do. Jews have an abhorrence to any type of thing like that, and as a result, it's for sure min Torah that a guy is mitame b'maga. In other words, that a guy, when you touch a dead non-Jew, Tuma is transported. It's a machlokas. It may only be a drabanan, actually, about whether that is whether it's a Tuma ba'ohel, right? I shouldn't say Magamat, Masa, and Ohel are only drabanans, and according to Rabbi Shimon, even Rabbi Shimon would say that even though Ohel doesn't be Matame, but Maga definitely is Matame. Okay. So therefore, for sure, touching a dead non-Jew would make you tamei. According to most opinions, though not all, not Rabbi Shimon, even being under the same roof, right, like a funeral chapel of a non-Jew would make the person tamei, or being in a cemetery. And the concern was that because they didn't mark the graves, there could have been fragments, right, bone fragments that could have popped up on the surface, and that may have, not been cared about. So it is possible that if you went traveling into Eretz Amim, you went into the Golus to visit, you could have therefore become Tameh without knowing about it. So the Gezerah was that you are now considered Tameh. Now, what does that mean? So you will actually see when we get into this Gemara that there were various different steps. What happens? Does that mean that if you simply just walk in the Golah, you are Tameh? Does it mean that if you have to bring back a piece of dirt, right? That makes you Tameh? What exactly? How far is the extent? And what happens if any food or truma touches that? What is the outcome of what happens to that material, that food? But you see, at any rate, this is a listing of certain really early Gezeros, and we identify this Gezerah of Tumas Eretz Amim to Rav Yossi ben Yoezer Yisrael and Yossi ben Yochanan Yishulayim, and they made another Gezerah, V'al Klis Chuchis. And they said also that glass can become tuma, can become tameh. So if you put something inside, for example, if I put food into a pot that's tameh, the food becomes tameh. That really only applies to metal, right? Glass is a different kind of creature, right? But the Gezerah was even based upon glass, and you'll see once again there's going to be different steps. That's what the Gemara is going to talk about, different levels and how the Gezerah was made. Why is glass different?
Because you can melt it down.
Because you can melt it down and
Well,
reuse it. You can melt down metal too.
That's why it's like metal.
Right.
Because you can reconstitute it.
But it breaks like clay cheres.
Yeah.
It breaks like clay cheres, whereas metal does not break. You subject glass to very high temperatures, it'll crack. Right? Pyrex has got certain metals put into it, right, to stop that. So it's like metal to some extent, that it can be melted and redone, but it's not like metal. So therefore, they made a gzeira about klei zchuchis. What we need to know is this is really minatora klei zchuchis is not going to be makabel tuma. And in fact, when the source of tuma it really coming about is when they go against Midyan and they capture utensils. It talks about klei cheres and talks about klei mateches, right? It doesn't talk about klei zchuchis. So therefore, that was a gzera. That's an early gzera. Shimon ben Shetach. Shimon ben Shetach is, once again, we know Shimon ben Shetach is. This is the period. It's the period already after the Maccabim. Tikain. Shimon ben Shetach's sister marries. How's it go now? One of the, or he's somehow related to Yanai HaMelech. Anyway, Shimon Shetach tikain ksuva leisha. So Shimon Shetach says makes a takana for ksuva for an isha. Now actually he does not make the takana about a ksuva, but he puts in certain safeguards and certain rules into the ksuva. So he strengthens the ksuva. And v'gazar tuma al kli matachos, and he makes a gzeira about kli matachos. The question is, what does this really mean? Is this really not already tamei before him? So the Gemara will talk about that. And then Shammai v'Hillel gazru tuma al yadayim. And then the end of this brisa says, who makes the gzeira about tuma on the yadayim? Shammai and Hillel. Now, what did our Mishnah say? Who was responsible for the Yud Ches Davar, including one of those 9 that we identified as one of the 18 was Yadayim? Who was responsible for that? They voted Beis Hillel against Beis Shammai. And this brisa, which lists early takanos, lists Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan, it lists Shimon ben Shetach, and then it lists the latest group here is Shammai and Hillel. So Shammai and Hillel is not necessarily Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Okay? I don't know. So that's the Gemara's question. So maybe you'll say, well, that's almost the same thing, right? Shammai, Beis Shammai.
They say there are only 6 machloksim between
Shammai and Hillel.
Shammai and Hillel.
I think 3. But it's going to come up very quickly, okay?
Oh, this
Right.
one we had on Shabbos.
Right.
Between Shammai, you mentioned it, between Shammai and Hillel.
Right.
Only a couple, but then with their...
Correct.
Yes.
Right. So that's the second question. In other words, we don't have it listed among those that we know that are Machlokas Shammai and Hillel. But more importantly, whether we know it, whether we don't know it, here we have identified who the author of the Gzeira is about Yodayim. Here we just read it, Shammai and Hillel. And in our Mishnah, it seems Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So you say, well, you know what? Sometimes it's not that careful. V'chi teima, Shammai v'siyato v'Hillel v'siyato. Maybe you'll say it means siyato is his buddies, his group. Okay, his cohorts. I mean, Shammai and his cohorts, and Hillel and his cohorts were the one who made the Gzeira Tuma Al Yadayim, which is really what our Mishnah says. So in other words, when it says Shammai and Hillel, it means Shammai and all the people who were with Shammai, which is Talmidei Shammai or Beis Shammai, and the same for Hillel. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Yud Ches Davar Gazru uVyud Ches Davar Nechleku. So there was a Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel had an expansion or an explanation of our Mishnah, Mishnah Zavin, which says that Yud Ches Davar Gazru Bo Bayom. So he says it doesn't mean that I actually just got together and they suddenly put it to a vote. They had been arguing about these things. Yud Ches Davar Gazru, V'Yud Ches Davar Nechleku. There were 18 things they made a gzeira, and the 18 things that they argued about, and according to Rashi, by the way, it's the same 18. They argued about 18, and they made a gzeira on those 18. According to the Ramban, it might refer to 18 and another 18. Okay, but the bottom line is, it means that whoever made the gzeiros, if you follow Rashi's interpretation, it's very clear. These 18 they had a machlokas, and these 18 they made a gzeira on. And we know, and Mr. Benlo kind of gave away part of the story here, we know that exactly which of the machlokim of Hillel and Shammai, and these 18 are not included, right? So that's where it gets knocked out. So, and if you, even according to the Ramban, who says that it's these 18 were the gzeira, and then there was another 18 that had a machlokas, it's the same guys. So in other words, our Mishnah may only list the 18 they made a gzeira on, but it means that day they had a machlokas on 18 other things, which we don't know. We never sum up all the machloksim of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, but we've sum up the machloksim of Hillel and Shammai. So whether it's these 18 that had a machlokas and they made a gzeira on, or there were 18 they made a gzeira on, which we know, and then another 18 they had a machlokas on, we know that Hillel and Shammai did not have machlokas about 18 things. They only argued about three things. So the Gemara says, V'ilo Hillel and Shammai lo nechleku ela begim makomos. That we know that Hillel and Shammai only had 3 machlokasim at all. The Amar Rav Huna begim makomos nechleku. And in 3 places, the Hillel and Shammai had a machlokas, and that was it. And this is one of the arguments about how or one of the discussion about how machlokasim started. Because initially, because you open the Gemara, you see every page is machlokas, you say, where's the Masorah? You see at one point the Masorah was a lot more clear. Right? And this is the idea that things became more difficult, people couldn't study as much, the other things happened. But initially there were not that many machlokim. Everything was passed generation after generation. It was black and white. Everybody did the same thing. Hillel and Shammai themselves only had 3 differences of opinion that they couldn't resolve. V'chi tema. So therefore, it can't be that Hillel and Shammai, that this brisa, which enumerates Yossi ben Yoezer, Yossi Yisreda, and Shimon ben Shetach, and Hillel and Shammai, is the same as our Mishnah, which enumerated Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, because our Mishnah talked about 18 things, and this talked about 3 things. Hillel and Shammai did only 3 things, so it can't be the same thing. V'chi tema. So maybe you'll say V'chi tema. I lost the place. Okay. Right. Okay. V'chitema asu inhu gazu litlos v'asu talmidaihu v'gazru lisrof. Maybe say there really were 2 different levels. They first came along based Hillel and Shammai, and they made a gzeira. Okay, they didn't even have a machlokas. They made a gzeira that if the yadayim touched anything, it became tameh enough that they wouldn't do anything with it. They couldn't eat it. And they didn't burn it. It's litlos. It's like a suffix. You don't know what to do with it. You don't want to burn it because you can't destroy truma. You don't want to eat it because, maybe it's tameh. So therefore, they made the initial initial step was they made a gzera to be toleh. V'yasu talmidayu v'gazvu lisrof. And then the next step was the second step. Was they made a second gzeira, which is the Beis Shammai Beis Hillel group, and they say, no, we're not just going to hold on to it. If it touches the hands, we're going to burn it. So they would actually be sorry if the truma that people shouldn't come to use it later on. So maybe we'll say that there really are two traditions here, and they're consecutive. First, you have Hillel and Shammai make a gzeira that you can use it. And then the Talmidim come along years later in the Aliyah of Hananya ben Gara, and they say, no, not only can't use it, we got to burn it right away. So maybe you'll say that's, and therefore we can reconcile our Mishnah and the Brisa. So maybe that'll be what we say. Amar Ilfa, but we have a Brisa in the name of Ilfa. Yodayim tchilas gzeirasim l'sreifa. That he had a tradition, or the Gemara has a tradition which they accept. The initial gzeira was for yadayim, if it touches truma, you have to burn it. Okay, not that you kept it and you didn't burn it, you didn't eat it. So in other words, there weren't really 2 different levels. They didn't make a level 1 to hold on to the truma if it touched the hands, and then level 2 was when Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel came to the Aliyah, they said we're going to burn it right away. That can't be, because the initial gzeira, when they said it's out. When they said the Yadayim are tameh, and they made the gzera for it, the initial gzera was to burn it. So the Gemara says, well, here's how we're going to end up with. It's even when I actually end up with, but end up initially. Ela asu inhu gazer v'lo kiblu minayu. So the Gemara says, no, there were 2 stages. The first stage was that Hillel and Shammai came along and says, we're going to make a gzera that if the hands touch unwashed hands touch truma, then you have to burn it. But people didn't accept it. In other words, they tried to make a gzeira, But the Gzeira was not accepted by Klal Yisrael. V'lo kiblu minayu. V'yasu talmidayu. Generations later, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel came along, Gazvu v'kiblu minayu. They made a Gzeira and they were makabel it from them. Okay, so in other words, that's where we stand at this point. There were two different levels. There was one point where Hillel and Shammai came along, and years later where Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, except Hillel and Shammai tried to make the Gzeira and they were defeated. They were not the only guys in the Beis Medrash. And then later on, as the situation progressed, in the Aliyah of Hananya ben Goran, they came along in Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, the Talmidim of Beis Shammai and Hillel came along, and they made the Gzeira, and as we saw, that carried the day. Or at least the Talmidim of Beis Shammai outvoted Talmidim of Beis Hillel, and it carried the day. That's how we're holding at this point. So we've reconciled. What's the whole big deal? Is it Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, or Shammai or Hillel? Okay. So far, so good. Okay. Now, there's one problem. That apparently this is not the first time that we find the Gzeira mentioned about Yodayim, and the Gemara backs it up to an even earlier stage. In the eyes of the Gemara, things that happen in the days of the Tanakh are things that happen in the days of Gemara really are happening already in the days of the Tanakh in many cases. So that therefore, David HaMelech is not just portrayed as a warrior. David HaMelech is portrayed as not just the writer of Tehillim, he's portrayed as a big Talmud Chacham. Shlomo HaMelech makes certain Gzeros. So the Gemara says, so v'akate, Shlomo Gazar. We have this tradition that Shlomo HaMelech was the one to make the Gzeira. Shlomo HaMelech made certain Gzeros, and our tradition is, this is one of the Gzeros that Shlomo HaMelech made. Now, the reason that Shlomo HaMelech would make Gzeros, this is like, going to sound like, where would you even think that Shlomo HaMelech would make Gzeros?
Is there any hint to this in Tanakh?
About this Gezerah? Or
In
about
general, maybe not this one, but in general.
we're going to see a hint that he would make a Gezerah. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu would agree to something he did.
Okay.
It's not really a hint in Tanakh. But the best you can say is that historically, Shlomo HaMelech lives at a time where there's no war, right? Till Shlomo HaMelech, David is the great warrior, right? First he has to establish himself, but he's warring against all kinds of people, Plishtim and so forth. By the time of Shlomo HaMelech, right, he's got 1,000 wives, right? Make peace, not war. So he's building alliances. Now, what happens after that, things come apart between Yeravam and Rechavim and so forth. But at the period of Shlomo is seen as this period of real peace. And there are a couple of things, there's a couple of Gzeros that apparently did not apply to war. One was they probably were not that careful about Tumah and Tahara. Careful about fighting, and there's corpses and killing and everything. And the other thing is the Gemara says that Eruvin, the laws of Eruvin don't apply in a battle. So in other words, if you work with those premises, you could conjecture, as this Gemara, I don't want to say conjectures, but has this tradition that Shlomo Melech would be logical that the era of Shlomo could be a time when these kind of gezeros could be created or crafted, would make sense. What's, of course, difficult for us to understand is I want to be very careful how I say this, what does Judaism look like with Gzeros and Rabbanans and rabbinic enactments during the time of Shlomo and David and so forth? We believe that, there's always a continuum. We believe that, we just discussed that Hillel and Shammai only have 3 machloksim, but so there is a tradition, right?
They didn't get these gezeros out of thin air.
Correct.
There's a tradition.
Correct.
Along these lines.
And who passes along the tradition, by the way? Right, when Pirkei Avos says, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, u'Mesor liYoshua, v'Yoshua leZakanim, u'Zakanim leNeviim, u'Neviim le'Anshei Knesset Gdola. And you just did all of the first temple. You just did all the time from Yoshua all the way until we come back in the second Beis Hamikdash, Anshei Knesset Gdola. So who are these people?
Anshei Knesset Gdola is not in Shlomo's time, it's later on.
Correct. Yes, yeah. It's Ezra's time to return to the second Beis Hamikdash. So even if you say it's the end of the first temple, what's going on? We don't really have, you can identify it. So the Rambam writes in his Akdama to Mishnah Torah, Akdama to Mishnayos, the Rambam writes that the Nevi'im served this purpose. Nevi'im served a dual purpose. They were both, spiritual, mystic people who had nevuah. I mean, positively, they said Devar Hashem, and also they were the ones who were in charge of the Masorah. So if you had a Shaila, who did you go to? You didn't go to the local Rav. There was no Shtat Rav. You went to the Navi, right? And if you didn't, and Naviim, and maybe the Kohanim as well. So these are the people who are maintaining the tradition. So if you have people maintaining the tradition, it's not that unheard of that they would make certain rules that would, be exceptions to the rule or xeros around the rules. We surely don't have the plethora of drabanans that they have then that we have now. I mean, life became more complicated. Things became more different. People lived outside of Eretz Yisrael. There was technology in those days in a primitive sense. So Torah has to adapt and build certain things. But there surely are things that we believe go back fairly early. And there would be the concept that wouldn't be called Rabbana, would be called some type of Gzeira. So while we don't really have, there's no reference in the Tanakh to these kinds of things, it's because the Tanakh is not a halachic literature. Right? The Torah is a halachic literature. The Torah is actually a keynotes or kol notes to halacha, right? It's a short version that we have to base upon the words in the Torah. The Tanakh is more, the morals, the values. The Nevi'im speak about certain things which we learn from Nevi'im, but very rarely. Most of the Navi is about what we should feel, what we should believe, what we should be moral, what we should be ethical. Right? Okay. So anyway, all I'm trying to say is the fact that where does this come from, Shlomo Melech? It doesn't really have a source for it, but if you think about it, the idea of the time of Shlomo Melech would be ripe for making certain protectionist kinds of things. So you thought, we were just discussing, is it Shammai and Hillel, is it Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel? Shammai and Hillel came along, that was rejected, and Talmud came along and was rejected. Wait, you're hundreds of years too late. But V'yakati Shlomo Gazar, didn't Shlomo make this Gzeira? Dam Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, 4 lines to the bottom. B'shah shetiken Shlomo Erevin unatilas Yadayim. When Shlomo HaMelech made 2 Gzeiros, when he made these 2 Gzeiros, one was about Erevin, that you carry from one place to another. 2 people share a chutzner, requires an eruv together to carry from one to the other, right? Remember, what we call an eruv in modern cities is really an extension of eruv chatzeros. It's just eruv chatzeros on a mega scale, where we're now renting the city for Shabbos use from the municipality, from the mayor, from the governor, whoever it is. I'm not even sure who we do it from. But really, and to some extent, it's really about people sharing a courtyard. So that's when he made the Gzeira about Erevin and the Tilas Yadayim, and that you have to wash your hands to preclude making Truma Tameh. Yatzah Baskal V'Yamra. A voice came out of Shemayim and said, it was a Baskal, and said, it quotes from 2 psukim of Mishlei and Koheles. It's got to be what Shlomo HaMelech would have written, because it's referring to Shlomo HaMelech. So one pasuk is from Mishlei Chav Gimel. It says, B'ni im chacham libcha yismach libi gamani. One is, Shlomo Melech writes in Proverbs, my son, if your heart is wise, then my heart is also wise with you. So they view this, or they understand this to be, that not that Shlomo Melech was writing about some father speaking to a son, but rather Kaviyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, I agree, you're a wise guy, right? You're the wise of all men, and I agree to your wisdom. What do you mean you're wise? If you just simply say what I said, you don't have to be wise. You're a parrot. Your wisdom was you added certain gzeiros. You made certain takanos. I agree. And another one is, and this is Koheles Perik Bet, the last Perik in Kohelet. Chacham b'ni v'samach libi v'yashiva charfai davar. My son, be happy, and smach chacham libi. My son is happy. V'samach libi, and my heart will be happy. V'yashiva charfai davar. And those who, I think charfai are those who want to knock me down, those who want to curse me, are returned or turned around. So. And anyway, the bottom line is, this Gemara has a tradition. You can't really prove it, of course, in these psukim, but the Gemara seems to have this tradition that of the Gzeiros, or Takanos, that Shlomo Melech made, he makes one about Netilas Yadayim. It's clearly, he understood that Yadayim are going to become Tameh. It's a Gzeira, a Takana. So, it's not Beis Hillel B'Shammai, it's not Hillel Shammai, it's hundreds of years later. You okay with that, Archie?
Yeah, I just wondered where the second pasuk is from. You said Koheles.
Koheles Yud Beis.
Is that what it says there?
Yes.
Here it says Shom.
Oh, maybe it's Mishlei. Oh, you're right, it's Mishlei. It's also Mishlei. The end of the pasuk is Mishlei.
No, sorry.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then Rashi actually quotes a pasuk in Koheles that says, V'izein v'chiker, that in the end of Koheles it says that he put his ear and he did chakira, he did an analysis. So Izain means he made like he put siyagim, he put ears around the Torah, he preventative things to be careful about, to watch out for it, to be attentive to. So in the same thing with Erevin, if you have two different Rishus HaYachids, what's Erevin really all about? I have a house, you have a house. We want to carry from one house to the other. So even though my house is Rishus Yachid and your house is Rishus Yachid, I'm going from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Yachid, the Gzeira is that I still have to connect them with an Erev. They have to connect them and I have to share something with them. Anyone have an opportunity to ever do an Erev between people? Maybe if you're outside the city? No? Jan Joyce Properties? Maybe not. Okay. All right. But basically, people usually do it once a year. They with a matzahs, right? With a matzahs, and
This is once a year for the whole year.
yeah, because matzahs can stay for the whole year. The bread has to be edible.
Yeah, no. Do once a year for the whole year. Got it.
Right. I think I told people once when I was a kid. I didn't tell you about this because I don't know the answer for it. By the way, I think I've told you more than one time that as a child, I had a Hasidic Rebbe on the first floor, and we lived on the second floor. And we were, born and bred misnagdim. But every week he would call me down, and then he would actually make an erev with me, right, on the big challah that was on the table. And I would go down. I was a teenager, and I never asked, but it always bothered me. First of all, if I didn't come down, no one ever blinked. Like, I was a kid, 15, 16, however old I was. I remember I was 14, 15, 16. I couldn't be much older. So, as a kid, you don't always do everything you're supposed to do. So if I didn't show up, what happened? Like, what did he do? And the second thing, the challah was gone after Friday night.
What was the purpose?
Well, the purpose was there was common halls. The purpose really was common halls.
Yeah, but he owns it.
Yeah,
He's the owner of the building, let's say.
So it actually was.
Someone's the owner of the building.
It was. Was really. He owned it. It was a 2-story building.
Right.
We rented about 2/3 of the top, of the second floor, but there were definitely common corridors that we had to use and his kids used coming up and down the stairs. So I don't know. I mean, I think if we and he, and this was before there was an Erev in the Bronx, in that area. So if we and he wanted to carry, there should have been an Erev. So I didn't understand. So later on, when I learned Hilchos Erev, I didn't understand what happened when I didn't come, and I really never understood what happened for the rest of Shabbos.
When you did come.
When I did come and he ate the challah. Because the Rebbe should take challahs,
Yeah.
So the truth is that if you have an Erev bein Hashmashos, so b'diavad it works for the rest of the year, for the rest of Shabbos.
So
Okay.
it doesn't matter if you eat it or
So if you don't matter if you eat it, but I mean, you're not supposed to eat it. I mean, that's why they do use matzahs once a year. Anyways, okay. Bottom line was this goes back to Shlomo Melech. It's a Drabanan. So the Gemara says, what's the answer? So Asa, last word, top of the next page. Asa Shlomo. Shlomo came and made what kind of gzeira? Shagaza lekachim. So Shlomo's gzeira. And this makes a lot of sense. Shlomo's Gzeira was not really for Truma, was especially about Kachim. Kachim, the difference between Truma and Kachim, Truma can go down to a Shlishi, Kachim can go down to a 4th level. So it's not, so it's whatever he made that you're dying to become, to make Truma to become Tameh, you have to say the Yadayim Rasheni. To make the kachim become tamei, so I guess we could even be a lower level, like a shlishi of some sort. But whatever he said, the gzera that he made was that if the hands were unwashed, they would make kachim to become tamei. V'yasu inhu v'gazer af l'truma. And then they came along, Hillel and Shammai, and then they tried to make it for truma, and they were defeated. And then their schools came along, and they voted Beis Shammai over Beis Hillel in the Aliyah of Chananya ben Garan. Okay.
Could it be that the Gezeras of Shlomo HaMelech, he built the Beis HaMikdash.
Right.
So you've got a new situation.
Yeah.
And
You have kachim.
with the Kachim, yeah.
But really not, because when David HaMelech is in Yerushalayim,
Kachim with the
Right.
Mishkan.
right, they have the kachim with the Mishkan in Yerushalayim with David.
Yeah.
So the only thing that changes is really that you have a building. What really changes is you have a lot more peaceful, He's considered, at least in our eyes, he's considered a potente, a real a Mid-Eastern monarch, with a real capital building, right, and a real shrine. So the pictures, by the way, the Beis Hamikdash that you always see are the pictures of Herod's Beis Hamikdash, right? We all know that. But still, whatever it was in the first temple, which was made of wood, which is probably where the Babylonians burnt it down, was still significant. Okay.
First temple's made of wood?
Yeah. Yep.
Cedars of Lebanon.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep. So, all right. So, at any rate, so that's how we resolve it. So, in other words, there are, at least at this point, and this I think how it stays for the Yodayim, there are 3 levels: Shlomo, and then Hillel and Shammai, and then Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Okay, which means, by the way, this was a recurring problem. It never went away. Sometimes you say, well, it's not that hard, we should not that difficult, we should put it aside. You see, this kept coming back. And therefore they had to build a gzeira about it. Okay, Tesvav Mid Aleph, second line, just continuing. Gufa. So we had discussed about whether this was a chlokes or whether they made a gzeira, did they nechlaku. Rav Yehuda Mashmuel. This is what we quoted before. So we quoted this brisa just about 10-15 minutes ago, that they was 18 they had a machlokas on and 18 they had a gzeira on. And I told you machlokas Rashi and Ramban and some of the other Rishonim whether it's the same 18. But this is the actual brisa itself. Okay, so the Gemara says gufa, and the term gufa means we're referring to some brisa we quoted before. Now we give you more of it. Gufa Rav Yehuda Mashmuel yudches davar gazu uv'yudches davar nechelku. Leaves the word davar out. So they made a gzeira for 18, and they had a machlokas about 18. V'yatanya, the Gemara says, wait, we have another brisa. It says hushvu bo, that there were 18, then hushvu bo. So it looks like there was a yudches gazru. And then we don't know the rest of the brisa. So the rest of the brisa looks like it says Yudches Gazru, Yudches Hishvu. So the Gemara says, you're right, Hishvu means they agreed upon it. Bo Bayom Nechliku, Olamachar Hishvu. First they had a machlokes, then the next day they all agreed, and then they took it to a vote and they passed it. So in other words, it's not like everything is a roll call. It seems they were able to, according to this, they were able to work things out, except according to the Ramban, according to Rashi at least. According to the Ramban, what's the Ramban would say? You actually have 54 items. 18 things they made a gzeira, 18 things they had a machlokas, 18 things that they agreed upon. They didn't have to make a gzeira. All right. Now, having said all that, we're going to really digress, not really digress, but now we mentioned that Beis Shammai and the machlokas is a Beis Shammai, if there were 18 of them, can't be Hillel and Shammai because there are only 3 machlokim about Hillel and Shammai. So now we're going to enumerate what they are. Now you said there were 6?
Well, yeah, I heard there were 6. And in fact, he doesn't say there were 3 things. He says, Begimel Mekaimus. So in 3 places.
Right. So the Gemara has to actually determine what those 3 places are.
Okay, right.
And that's what the Gemara is going to do now.
Okay, good.
But it's interesting because the Gemara seems to say, what is this, and what is this, and what is that? And then the Gemara says, oh, it looks like there's another for the 4th one. And it says, oh, but that's an exception. It looks like there's another one, but that's also an exception. It looks like there's another one, that's also an exception. Okay? So it's not like, in other words, it appears, the tradition was they had 3 machloksim, and then you've got to fit it. It's like saying Taryag mitzvos.
Yeah.
Right? You have the number Taryag, then
Everyone agrees on it.
everybody agrees there's Taryag mitzvos, right? But because Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, okay? So and then you have to figure out how do you make the numbers fit into 613. And if you have too many, you got to squeeze them together. You got enough, you got to pull them apart. Okay, but that's the same kind of thing. So what the bottom line is, there are a minimal amount of machloks between Hillel and Shammai. Now, if there's more than 3, the Gemara is going to actually deal with a few others. But this, between here until the bottom of this, until the middle of the page, we're going to actually go through what those items are. So it's far afield from Masechet Shabbos, and even far afield from this Mishnah, but seeing that we mentioned that they have, that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is not the same as Hillel and Shammai, what are those? All right. Gufa. Amrav Yehuna, Begimel Mekomos Nechlaku Shammai v'Hillel. Okay, so what are they? So Gemara gives the first one. Shammai Omar Mikav Chala, the Hillel Omer Mikavayim. How much dough do you need to make challah? So Shammai said a kav, and Hillel said 2 kavs. V'chachamim omrim, and then the chachamim came along and they said, lo k'divrei zeh v'lo k'divrei zeh, ela kav u'mechza chayv b'chala. Okay, they said 1.5. They split the difference. However,
How much is the kav more or less?
I don't remember how much the kav.
Is that like today we use for challah?
A kav is 4 lugim.
Four
Okay.
lugim is just, a lug
Okay.
is a mouthful.
No, that's malo lugma. A log, I'm not sure how much a log
It
is.
doesn't matter.
I don't
Small
know.
measurement or big measurement?
It's a big measurement, I think. I don't
I thought
know.
a kav was like a. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I don't know. I was thinking about it and look it up.
24 beans.
24 eggs. There you
Is that
go.
what it says?
Is 1 kav or 4 kavs? Is 1 kav or 4 or 1 log?
24 eggs.
Kav equals 24 beans.
There you go.
That could be like 4 cups or something.
So you want to know how much challah you need to kind of
5
to make a
cups,
bracha? Last.
5 cups or something.
I don't remember. It's
Two-
like
two-
two kilo.
Two is with a, two is you take the challah without a bracha. I think 5 you take with a bracha.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, but something like 2 to 5, something like
Right.
that.
So that's why women get together to these challah bakes, because really when they do it on their own, it's probably not usually enough to make to. Sorry.
But the other thing is, what my wife used to do all the time, is make enough to make a bracha and then freeze half.
That's right. That's right. Right. And you cover it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, you covered all.
Cover it with the 1 bilki. No. The challah here means one of the things that we have to give to the kohanim, like we give truma, is they may rishis as risosechem. From the first of the dough, we used to give to the kohen. So we still take that off when we are making large doughs, and that's called challah. The colloquialism that we talk about is challah. In the same way that the colloquialism of eating after davening is called a kiddush is based upon the kiddush that's made at the kiddush, right? So I'm sorry, we kind of skipped that. So therefore, how much dough do you need to actually make a bracha on challah? I forgot now. It's like 2 kilo, or is it 2 pounds? Maybe 2 pounds. Might be like 5 kilo. It's
Like a bag. Is it 2 kilos maybe?
there are 2 kilo bags and 5 kilo bags. 2 kilos, it's a 5 pound bag. There's 5 pound, 10 pound bags.
Yeah, it's a five,
Okay.
I think it's 2 kilos.
Right, I think it's like a 5 pound bag of flour. So, which means, and you have to make it at one time, right? You make it at one time, you either actually put it into one big mixing pan, or what they do is they actually cover all the doughs together with like a big cloth.
If you do different mixing pans.
Yeah, correct. Then you do the bracha. Right, but I'm saying that's why many times you see women will get together for these challah bakes, because really, when you think about it, you really got to make a lot of challah and either freeze the dough or freeze the challah for later on to make it with the bracha itself. Okay. So at any rate, so how much was his 1 kav, or 2 kavs, and the Chacham said a kav and a half. Now, mishegdilo hamidos, when the measurements became inflated or enlarged. Okay, this is like I don't know, inflation. When the Canadian dollar became hit 80 cents. Okay. When but no, it was apparently a change in the measurements. Okay, so that the measurements therefore amru, they said chameshes revayim kemach chayv mechala. It's no longer 1.5, which would be 6. 1 kav is 4 log. Okay, and 2 is going to be 8. So 1.5 is going to be 6. So now that the measurements became larger, let's see if I got that correct. So what used to be equal to 6 logs is now equal to 5 logs. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay, it's like different sizes of shoes between European and American and Canadian and North American. So chayav mechala, and Rav Yossi says, look, there's even machlokas how much it got larger. Rav Yossi says, hey peturim, hey v'yod chayavim. No, 5 revaim was patur. It had to be 5 and a little bit. Okay, so that was number 1. So number 1 apparently of the machlokas Hillel and Shammai is about how much dough do you need to be able to give the mitzvah of challah. Okay, it doesn't sound like there's a major machlokas. I guess it is a major machlokas, but it sounds like the Masorah was about shiurim. Like it's not like some machlokas are earth shattering. Yes, you can, you must do this, and the other is no, you're not allowed to do this. Right. So that's number 1. Number 2, v'idach. What's the next one? V'idach normally means the opposite one, but here it means the next one. V'idach. Hillel Amar, how much water has to go into a mikvah? Okay, let me back it up. how small can a mikveh be from rainwater? 40 saw, which I think we says 190 gallons. I'm not sure if that must be American gallons. Not sure it's imperial gallons. 600 liters. 600 liters is about how much? About 150 gallons.
Is it 600 liters? I'm mistaken.
Well, it's about 600 liters is about 150 gallons. I believe it's 190 gallons. Let's assume 190 gallons for argument's sake. But here's what's important. Once you have a mikveh that has been built with rainwater or with natural water, you can add to it water that has been transported through a utensil. Right? And that's exactly what we do in our modern mikvahs. Right? We have a bar which is the rainwater, comes down from a clay pipe from the ceiling. Right? Once we have that, we can always add to it, so we can have the two touch each other. We can have water pour over one to pour into the other, but that's fine. However, if you add water before you reach the minimal amount of mikvah, you can't make it up. So in other words, if you before you reach the minimal amount, let's say the 190 gallons, you can't say, well, I've got now half a bucket of water I carried up, I'll just wait for the rainwater to fill it out. So that postles the mikvah forever till you start again from the beginning. Okay? All right?
So yeah, what is the correct way of mixing the two?
There are two ways. One is called Zriya, one is called Hashaka. The two ways to mix the two today, well, let's start with what you have. You have one bar, right? This is the rainwater bar. The rainwater comes, you can see, actually I don't know the mikveh, but you go into the Chabad, you'll see there's a pipe that comes down from the roof. It's a clay pipe, it's attached, it's stuck in, goes straight down, so it's not a kli. Okay? That's the water that's how the mikveh was started. Right? Today, I don't know how you start a mikveh. You either wait for it to rain. Back in the old days, they used to chop ice out of the lakes and I'm not sure how they brought it and how they carried it without putting it into utensil, but I guess it's like the iceman used to take. Right? Today, I don't know how you would do that we don't really have that kind of...
Snow?
You have snow. It takes a lot of snow. You can make water out of snow, but it takes a lot of snow to make a little bit of water. Correct. Okay. At any rate, so once you have that, so then you want to add more water. So there are two ways that we can do it. One way is called Zriya. Zriya is to plant. Right? So planting means, not really planting, but that's the term that's used. You pour water over the rainwater pit, and it spills out the other side or to another pool. So it comes down, it spills over, and you have another pool that which is connected to the first pool, but it's spilling over one to the other. That's called Zriya. So the water has moved into the one rainwater pit. The water that now spills out is considered rainwater plus she'uvim water, but it's rainwater that was there before. That's kosher water. Okay, that's called Zriya. The other way that it's done is called Hashaka, where you have two parallel pools. One pool is the pool with rainwater. One pool, then you fill up a second pool with clean water, city water, and there's a connector in the concrete that you unplug, and the two get Hashaka, they kiss. Hashaka means to kiss. The two waters kiss, and therefore they're connected. That's how it's done. Now, everybody does it this way, except Chabad does it a different way. Chabad, okay. Chabad has a special chumrah that's called mikvah al gabe mikvah, that their rainwater pit has to be below the pit you go in. And if you go into the mikvah in Chabad, you can actually feel that you're standing like on a some kind of plate when you go into the mikvah. But that
because it moves under you.
Yeah, you can feel it's different than the actual, because otherwise it's concrete. So that's a chumrah that they have. And they feel that actually that's a better way for Hashaka, because they feel, and there is some logic to it, that eventually when you start mixing waters, the waters get diluted. Right? If you keep pouring water over the rainwater, how much rainwater is going to be left after, 5-6 years? Right? If you have the two pools kiss each other, eventually the water begins to intermingle. So they feel if you put the rainwater on the bottom, I'm not sure who the engineers are going to tell me this is right or wrong, if you have the rainwater on the bottom, it's going to mix less by putting water on top. Now, before the engineers kind of throw all the stones, okay, first I have to say, as you know, I'm not Chabad, but you need to understand, by the way, this complicates building a mikveh tremendously because you need to go further into the ground. You need to dig down deeper to build this in order to make it work. Because you have to have 190 gallons below that. All I will say is that the rainwater pool is not heated. Rainwater pool is rainwater pool. The water you go into in the mikveh is heated. So logic would say to me, and I'm not the engineer here, that if the upper pool is heated and the lower pool, because what you have in a mikveh gabi mikveh, you have a pool and you have a pool on top, right? So the upper pool is heated, which has got heated water put in, and the lower pool is made of rainwater, which is cold, right? The heated water will rise and will mix less. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I can tell you this: the many mikvos will use a combination of more than one pool. So I think even in Chabad they have it's a mikvah gabi mikvah plus they have a hashaka next to it as well to another bar. So I believe there's a bar underneath where you go into the mikvah, and then next to it there's another bar. I think it's where you put the kalim in the mikvah in the Chabad in the men's mikvah. Okay, so that's how we do it.
They do it because of temperature. Is that their cheshbon?
Why they do it?
They say because of the temperature.
I don't know I don't remember what they say, but it's
eventually it will mix.
Eventually we'll mix. Sure, eventually it'll mix.
I mean, it may not mix right away.
But correct. Eventually it'll mix. Correct. I agree. Eventually it will mix.
Round motion. Molecules move around.
Right. Okay. That's the whole machlokas. How often should the water be changed and start all over? And usually they don't change it.
I thought when we have the mikveh next to each other, before you get in, it's below the kissing point. When you get in, it goes above and it touches.
So it might be for you. When you're going in, you're for men. There's less chumras they put in for mikvos for men than for women. Okay. In Chabad, it's two separate mikvos, correct? I don't know. I mean, I've only gone to the men's mikvah. Forgive me. I believe Chabad is a separate mikvah.
In Edinburgh, there's only one mikveh for women.
Where?
So in Edinburgh, south.
Right. Edinburgh South is only for women, but I believe in Chabad there are two separate mikvahs here, which I'm quite sure. Which is why. I'm very careful. I don't want to take money away from the shul. Which is why on Erev Yom Kippur and Erev Rosh Hashanah you can go to the mikveh in Chabad later than you can go here.
Because they switch it over.
Because here they have to empty it and switch it over and clean it out. There's only one mikveh. Anyway, so whatever. Okay. So I mean, for men going to the mikveh, it's a different kind of reason that we're going than for women. For women, it's mamish tum and tahara. For us, it's we're still tamei and we're not becoming tahar and all those kinds of things. There's a lot of reasons spiritually that you want to do that, but in terms of halachas, right? In fact, many people say for men you can go into a swimming pool. That's really just it's not rainwater. It's water that's actually pumped around.
A shower too.
I'm sorry.
It is rainwater.
It was not started with rainwater, and second of all, it's pumped around. The moment it's pumped around, it's actually going through utensils. The moment you pump and you have a filter system in the pool, right? You're going to do that. Okay, so I think we're pretty much out of time. So at any rate, the next thing we're going to talk about is about how much water can go in to a mikvah, and how before there's enough water to make it tahar, right? Now, what will disqualify it? What happens if one drop falls in, right? Like, 1 drop of meat into your chicken soup is 1 drop of meat into your milk is not going to make it necessarily treif. What happens if 1 drop of rainwater falls in? So there's a certain shurim, what the shurim are. That's going to be number 2 of the machlokes in Hillel Shammai. We'll take it up next week. Okay. We're on for next week, guys? Yes, good. Oh, Tisha B'Av. We're not on for next week. There we go. All right, so we're not on for next week, so we're on for the week after. Okay, that'll be like the 30th or something, 31st. Good. I'll send you guys an email. Thank you for reminding me.
I'll go to my car and put it in the car.
I come in the car and say,